At last. I must say I'm disappointed in your progress. I imagined you'd be here sooner. Tell me, did it trouble you to murder your brothers?
Did it trouble you when you ordered me into the abyss? You are lost in a maze of moral relativism, Kain. These apparitions and portents. What game are you playing now?
Destiny is a game, is it not? And now, you await my latest move.
When Soul Reaver was in its final stages of production, one thing became absolutely clear to the developers. The game would never be delivered in time under its then current design conditions. So director Amy Hennig and the rest of the team at Crystal Dynamics were forced to cut nearly a third of the game's original content. Although Soul Reaver was well received for its mesmerizing script, quality voice acting, and immersive gothic atmosphere, some fans were left bewildered by its abrupt ending, which concludes with Kain laughing as he escapes through a time portal, followed by a disgruntled Raziel chasing after him. It wasn't quite the ending people were expecting, particularly as the story sets up Raziel to be this fallen hero on the quest for vengeance against the master who betrayed him. By not giving us Kain's death at Raziel's hands, the ending is not fulfilling the promise set up in the premise, and thus leads to an unsatisfying climax. I think the devs realised the disappointment some people might have felt towards this conclusion, which is why they included Kain's last bit of dialogue, where he essentially explains to Raziel that this is not how their story ends. It's amusing because it sounds like the writers are speaking directly through Kain, asking players to go out and buy the sequel. But to be fair to the dev team, Soul Reaver was never supposed to have what might be perceived as a cash grab cliffhanger ending. In fact, the crew were just over ambitious. They bit off more than they could chew with this project, and some of their ideas needed to be reined in if Soul Reaver was ever going to see the light of day. Much of the game's content, including additional areas, bosses, abilities, and original ending which brought greater closure to the story, were either trimmed down or removed entirely. Yet despite this split, latent components were left buried in the code to avoid unforeseen glitches that might have arisen from their removal. For years, dedicated fans have been striving to recover and bring to light as much of this material as they could, and now, as recent as 2020, early prototype versions have been unveiled, offering a treasure trove of never before seen footage. Piecing this material together with the deleted dialogue, I have reconstructed the removed scenes according to my vision of how Soul Reaver might have originally panned out. So without further ado, let's return to the bowels of an inverted clockwork as we assume the role of Raziel and face off against Kain once again.
You nearly had me, Raziel. But this is not where or how it ends. Fate promises more twists before this drama unfolds completely.
Even this small measure of Kain's soul has conferred on you a great gift. Like your master, you may now shift into the material plane at will. While your health must still be fully restored, you no longer require a portal.
Right off the bat, Raziel splinters his former master's soul, presumably due to the abilities of the Soul Reaver. In doing so, Raziel would have consumed the small piece of Kain's fractured soul, bestowing upon him the power to shift into the material plane, regardless of whether or not a portal was available. This would have had the added bonus of granting Raziel access to even more of Nosgoth's world that lay beyond his reach up till that point. Places like the Soundforge are opened up, giving the Wraith the opportunity to imbue the Soul Reaver with elemental energy. Now wounded, Kain flees to his mountain sanctuary so that he may recover instead of travelling to the past as depicted in the retail version.
Return to the human citadel, Raziel. The temple, despite its innocuous facade, is rotten to its core, and like a cancer, spreads its corruption throughout the city.
Many years ago, when first traversing across Nosgoth's barren landscape, I always thought there was more to the city than meets the eye. For sure, it was an interesting area to explore. With its high walls and deep moats, it showed how a small part of humanity was able to survive despite being thoroughly domesticated by Kain's empire. However, it did seem odd that such a large labyrinth full of human NPCs was designed only to house a few extra power-ups and the water glyph. Well, as it turns out, there's much more to this place than even its own citizens are aware of.
I watched unseen as shadowy figures slipped down the temple walls. The city slumbered, oblivious to the danger creeping just outside.
Here we see another subclass of humans who turn their back on humanity. A group of cultists have chosen to adapt to the vampire tyranny of the last millennium by serving their tormentors and worshipping them as gods. These vampire worshippers are an insidious threat to the human race, who gladly give their own blood and lives to sustain their masters. We last saw them in the upper corridors of the silenced cathedral, serving the Zephanim by luring victims to the cathedral to be used as sacrifices. Interestingly, in the early alpha, these indoctrinated humans are not present in the silenced cathedral and only feature outside the city's temple walls, suggesting that they might have only supposed to have been found deep within the heart of the human citadel itself.
Mysterious figures moved under cover of darkness, their robes betraying occult intent. This temple seemed to be a source of contagion. I would find a way to infiltrate this vampire lair.
It is revealed that while the city may have at one time sought to keep out Nosgoth's vampire plague, it was, in actuality, secretly ruled by the vampires themselves. Unbeknown to its citizens and defenders, the city's true purpose is that of a farm to harvest men, women and children for their blood. It is the perfect breeding ground for the vampires to dominate mankind by having their servants kidnap victims in the middle of the night, ushering them deep into the dark depths of a hidden undercity. There, a victim is taken to be prepared as a blood sacrifice. On the Elder's advice, Raziel investigates the undercity. The settlement is accessed via a canal outside the temple, leading to a large body of water and a single pipe. Swimming through this pipe brings Raziel down into a subterranean complex. Surprisingly, no worshippers are found within the undercity. However, as the location was left unfinished in development, it is believed that they were intended to appear here, alongside a multitude of vampire spawn. The undercity mostly consists of a vast chamber with numerous tall towers crossed by various bridges. You could say the area is a gigantic puzzle box, which requires the player to solve its secrets in order to progress. Navigating these passages, Raziel is able to ascend to higher areas by raising the water level several times. Once the water was a sufficient height, Raziel could reach a spiral staircase, leading to the uppermost room, where he intrudes upon an unholy ritual conducted by the cult's notorious leader, someone whom Raziel knew quite well in his former life as Kain's first lieutenant, the Priestess.
Heretic! Welcome to your undoing. Your sorcery is useless in this holy place.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Faith? Faith left you when you were excommunicated by our Lord Kain.
I was executed, not excommunicated. You will learn the difference.
Get him!
Come to them!
As the battle gets underway, the Priestess summons an array of vampires to swarm Raziel. Our protagonist faces wave after wave of undead creatures, who all appear to be of Melchahim's clan. Whether this is because these ghouls were easier to control, or whether it's due to the devs not having enough time to implement other clans, is unclear. Nevertheless, with his upgraded abilities, Raziel easily defeats this horde of monsters, backing the priestess into a corner.
No!
Your faith has failed you. Where are your precious vampires now? Where is your holy Kain?
You are the one who has betrayed his faith, his brethren, his creator. I have served my gods.
And now, you will meet them.
In her long service to her vampire masters, the priestess had learned a measure of sorcery. In devouring her soul, this power is conferred on you. You may project your spirit, and in so doing, take possession of your victim's body.
The priestess's appearance in-game differs to how she was depicted in the Soul Reaver comic, where she wears more conservative clothing. But notice the tattoos on her body. Each one represents a clan symbol. Curiously, Raziel's clan symbol is also featured on her lower back, implying that while she considered Raziel a traitor, she never despised him to the point where she felt the need to scar her own body to remove his mark. The Elder God's comments about her long servitude, as well as her brief appearance in the comic, where a seer foretells her death at Raziel's hands, can be taken to mean she's lived for hundreds of years, and likely knew Raziel before his execution. After slaying her, Raziel would then devour her soul, obtaining her gift to project his spirit energy to possess vampires, similar to how the Hilden could control living beings as seen in Blood Omen and Defiance. In fact, much of the deleted content from Soul Reaver 1 was carried over and reinterpreted into later titles, like how in Defiance, Raziel could possess corpses to shift into the material realm.
Kain has withdrawn to his mountain retreat. Your only means of reaching him cuts straight through the lair of your brother, Ariel.
Ariel.
With the position ability thus acquired, Raziel moves on to his next destination, the industrial heartland of Kain's empire, a region teeming with furnaces and rivers of lava. Ariel's territory is entered from a structure in the same position as the Oracle's Cave, which was moved on release. In an early alpha build, there is nothing preventing Raziel from simply storming the lair. However, it is theorized that his way would have been blocked by a door requiring a switch to be operated from a high ledge that he couldn't reach. By exploiting his newfound talent, Raziel would possess a Terilum soldier to flick the switch for him. Entering the territory brings Raziel to an impressive orrery, which is also viewed from above by 3 glass windows. On the other side of these 3 windows are devices used to activate the orrery. In time, Raziel's journey will take him to each one of these control mechanisms, but for now, he must move past the structure towards a familiar sight. The renowned smokestack, first seen in Soul Reaver's opening cinematic.
This smokestack will permit your ascent to the summit of Kain's mountain sanctuary.
In order for him to ascend to Kain's location, Raziel needed to find a way to operate the giant metal propeller affixed to the smokestack. To do this, he had to find 3 levers positioned on each of the fan's blades to open the surrounding doors so that he could gain access to those side chambers encircling the orrery. Partway through this excursion, he discovered a curious looking room.
Though the room seemed vacant, these banners clearly identified it as Tyrell's audience chamber.
Moving past the seating area, Raziel cautiously approaches the chamber beyond, but finds it eerily vacant, though for some reason or another, he cannot shake the feeling of being watched. Quietly, he puts the disturbing thought to one side, and tries to find another way out of the audience chamber, when suddenly, approaching footsteps echo right behind him.
Leaving so soon, brother?
Let me pass, Tyrell. I have enough blood on my hands today. My quarrel lies with Kain.
Poor Raziel. Your rage blinds you to the bond of gratitude that we owe our master.
Gratitude? Toward one who would have you grovel at his gate like a dog? You once had noble aspirations, Tyrell. Now, how humbled are your goals? Do you prosper on the scraps he casts you?
Your insults will do nothing to blunt the agonies of your demise.
You killed me once. Behold the result. I have no more to fear from you.
I smell water. Tell me, have you, like Rahab, learned to swim in all these eons?
Tyrell's backstory, including his appearance in Soul Reaver, is covered in much greater detail in my Tyrell character study video, but I just want to touch on how different he is portrayed here to his Defiance counterpart. In Soul Reaver, he's far more mentally stable than the deranged quadruped we see later on. His words imply that he stayed loyal to Kain, never once faltering in his devotion towards his master, despite the fact that he's fallen far from the esteemed position he once held. Just look at what being second in command of Kain's empire means now. His sheer loyalty has essentially reduced him to that of an unquestioning slave. Like Raziel says, he's nothing but a lapdog whose sole purpose is to guard the entrance to Kain's sanctuary. I like to believe the Tyrell we see in the first Soul Reaver is still canon to the series, and is what he used to look like before devolving further into his Defiance model. If this entry ever did get a remake, it would be exciting to see some of this deleted content reintroduced into a new game. For example, you could potentially have Raziel battling Tyrell before suddenly vanishing in a pool of light as he is pulled back to the Blood Omen era by Azimath the Planer. That could be a fun scene to watch while keeping in line with the series' established lore. In any case, it's evident how this battle between brothers would have played out. I imagine Raziel and Tyrell trading blows, with Tyrell assuming he has the upper hand, as none of Raziel's attacks appear to hurt Tyrell.
You try my patience, Raziel.
I wouldn't celebrate just yet.
Just like with his other siblings, Raziel would use the surrounding environment to destroy his brother. Tyrell's chamber lies directly beneath a water reservoir. As Raziel had recently raised the water levels, the pressure is much higher. By tricking Tyrell into taking out the support pillars one by one, the vampire is essentially ensuring his own demise. While they fought, the ceiling would start to show cracks, until at last it gave way to a huge wave of torrential water crashing into and instantly killing Tyrell. Consuming his brother's soul, Raziel would receive the amplified force projectile, a more powerful ability to his standard telekinesis, allowing him to push enemies further and smash open heavy doors previously thought to be immovable. Raziel could then constrict the 3 dials, as well as the orrery itself, triggering the fans of the smokestack. Now it was only a matter of using an updraft to ascend to the summit of the sanctuary, where Kain was waiting. Upon arriving at the retreat, Raziel steps into a wide corridor topped by several extravagant arches. The palpable imagery features a grandiose assortment of figures and faces fit for a king. As Raziel inches closer to his goal, a dark passageway soon takes him to an equally dark hall, where he comes face to face with someone he did not expect.
Raziel, I am your only hope. Only my spirit can empower the Soul Reaver to destroy Kain and restore balance to Nosgoth. You know this is true.
Listen to her, Raziel. Strike me down if you can, but without her essence, the blow will barely sting.
More of your lies.
Only truth. Believe me, Raziel. Believe.
Do you have the will to do it, Raziel? Could it be, after all your posturing, you do not possess the resolve for this final act? Can you have come this far, only to fail now?
If you felt this scene left you with more questions than it did answers, then you are not alone. For me, the biggest question is how in Nosgoth was Ariel able to leave the pillars, given that they were her prison? While there is no clear-cut answer, the best theory I can come up with is that she was called by the Wraithblade itself to purify it with her soul. This would be similar to how the Spirit Forge summoned the souls of all previous Balanced Guardians for the final baptism of the Blade in Defiance. Given that the pillars have been described as the lock and the Reaver as the key by the ancient Janos Ordran, I think it's safe to assume the Wraithblade was somehow involved in freeing Ariel, drawing her to this place of sacrifice. Whether at the behest of Ariel or acting on a primal impulse to rebel against his master, Raziel strikes her down, and in so doing gains the much more powerful Ariel Reaver. Striding towards the direction he'd heard Kain's voice, Raziel is ready for the final confrontation.
You have your father in you after all.
My father? You're nothing but a grave robber, Kain.
True enough.
I thought I understood you, Kain, that your jealous hatred was the root of the wounds you inflicted, but this is madness.
You and I have both been to Mobius's chamber, Raziel. The future has always been written. You have served me well. Even now you fail to disappoint. Shall we see if you pass the final test?
Addressing the elephant in the room, for whatever reason, the developers didn't enable the Ariel Reaver for Raziel's final confrontation with Kain, which is why we see Raziel wielding the Material Reaver here instead. Thankfully, the devs left in the option to initiate the final clash, giving us a glimpse at how this bitter struggle between these two legendary characters might have ended. With respect to Kain's line about Raziel having similar traits to his father, I've seen some fans construe this sentence to mean Kain knew Raziel's biological father personally, but the way I see it, Kain is referencing himself here. I think there is plenty of evidence to support this, given how the series often refers to Raziel and his brothers as Kain's vampire sons. By telling Raziel that he has his father in him, he's essentially praising Raziel for doing what is necessary to make his goal a reality. A strong parallel can be drawn between the moment Kain refuses the sacrifice, damning Ariel to an eternity of torment for his ambition, and the aforementioned scene of Raziel violently striking Ariel down so that he may at last wield a weapon powerful enough to finally put an end to Kain. Tellingly, his last line also reveals his motivations, particularly as to why he sentenced Raziel to the Abyss. Despite popular opinion, this version of Kain did not kill Raziel due to any jealousy he felt towards Raziel for evolving before him. No, he did it because deep down, Kain is a fatalist. Within this particular Kain, there exists a core belief that no matter what he does or doesn't do, the future will always be the same because it is predetermined. Unlike the Kain we got in later titles, who sought to actively rebel against his destiny, This version of Kain embraces his fate after having witnessed everything play out in the Chronoblast eons ago.
Now, we finish this, once and for all.
As with Ariel, Kain's soul is consumed by the Soul Reaver. It's a beautifully tragic moment that would have rounded off Kain's character nicely had this been the concluding title.
Such a dire fate, their souls commingling, fettered eternally, just as Kain's refusal had bound them together centuries before.
From this summit, the pinnacle of the silenced cathedral is within your reach. Hurry, Raziel. With the Soul Reaver thus enhanced, no obstacle can thwart your progress, no enemy obstruct your path. But take heed, the vampires of this world can sense your intentions and will hound you in their desperate fury.
From here, Raziel takes flight, gliding straight towards the silenced cathedral, remembering the weapon the cathedral's original architects had devised. However, a horde of vampires sensing the approaching doom of their species starts to move.
As they swarmed after me, I felt the terror that must have filled their wizened hearts. They knew what I had to do here, that it would spell their downfall, and that I too might perish in the very act. This tower had stood too long as a grotesque symbol of Kain's perverse intent. The time was ripe, indeed past due, for me to exploit my newborn talents and send a hymn of death across this land. Enough to banish sanity. Enough to set the children of the night plucking at their eyes, tearing open their own throats. Enough to destroy every vampiric creature on the face of this bruised and bleeding land. My goal was within reach. All that remained was to open each and every sounding pipe.
Fending off an onslaught of desperate creatures, Raziel succeeds in opening the cathedral's dormant sounding pipes, blasting a deafening hymn across Nosgoth, and purging the world of its entire vampire population.
It is done, Raziel. Your destiny is fulfilled. Though you have destroyed every creature who might call you kin, the world is born anew. The cycle of birth and death, stalled and stagnant these long years, once again begins to flow. You have done well, my servant.
While Raziel thought that he too might be slain in the act, thanks to his remaking as a wraith, he survived. His vengeance and destiny complete, Raziel is congratulated by the Elder God as the cycle of birth and death begins anew. With nothing left to do, Raziel returns to the underworld, all whilst contemplating his journey thus far.
Melchahim? Yes, brother. You should have stayed where the Master sent you, Raziel. You will find Nosgoth less pleasant than you remember.
Zephan, your visage becomes you. It's an appropriate reflection of your soul.
And you are not his handsome Raziel anymore, his precious firstborn son turned betrayer.
Rahab, do you know what we were before Kain spawned us?
Human. Unbound at last. I thank you, brother.
Your thanks are premature, Juma. I have not forgotten whose hands bore me into the abyss.
Leaving so soon, brother?
Let me pass, Tyrell. I have enough blood on my hands today. My quarrel lies with Kain.
You've served me well. Even now you fail to disappoint. Shall we see if you pass the final test?
Be wary, Raziel. Those blind with rage are by destiny ensnared.
My good servant.
I wonder, Old One. Did you truly resurrect me, or were you simply there when I awakened from my torment in the abyss? I suspect you found me merely convenient, a durable and gullible tool for you to manipulate.
Damn you.
It was then Raziel knew he'd been a pawn for the Elder God all along. His purging of his kin had devastating consequences for the world. With the vampires gone, the Elder was now fully in command. The souls of the dead were his to feed on, and the last remnants of humanity were merely his playthings to do with as he saw fit. Despite the guilt that played on his mind, news of the Elder God's true intentions deepened Raziel's resolve to find a way to set things right. He knew of only one way: to use Mobius's time-streaming device to go back in time and change history.
Raziel, Redeemer and Destroyer, Pawn and Messiah, welcome, time-span soul. Welcome to your destiny. Where time is but a loop, a loose stitch in the universal cloth, a streamer might seize upon a chance, a fatal slip, and plunge the fate of planets into chaos.
While I think we can all be grateful that the normal ending gave us sequels to explore these characters in greater depth, I have to point out that had the game ended as was initially planned, we still would have gotten a sequel after this. Amy Hennig confirmed as much in an interview in 2012, basically going on record to say the story would have arrived at a similar place, just by a different route. Following a grief-stricken Raziel in an alternative Soul Reaver 2, as he continued against a more overtly malicious Elder God, whilst being manipulated by the devious Mobius, could have made for an engaging experience. Especially as, without the presence of Kain, this may have all ended in tragedy. I can just imagine Raziel's soul being consumed by the Reaver Blade at the end of Soul Reaver 2, with no one there to yank it out of him. Ultimately, I think how everything turned out was a blessing in disguise, because hiding the Elder's intentions whilst keeping Kain alive added to the mystery of the story as first-time players tried to decipher each character's motivations. But I'm eager to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Now, as a special bonus, I want to pay tribute to some of the other Lock content creators out there in the community who have kept this series alive after all these years. First and foremost, Raina Audrin, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, has in-depth videos on YouTube covering a range of Legacy of Kain topics. If you want something that doesn't solely focus on the story and its characters, but also goes into the gameplay mechanics, hidden features, as well as a range of other material, I highly recommend their channel. Ben Lincoln from the Lost Worlds has created a website for preserving the deleted and altered material. He also has a YouTube channel featuring extensive research into the alpha and beta versions of Soul Reaver. Then there is Basalim, creator of the goldmine of information that is the Legacy of Kain wiki. And of course I have to mention the Hilden, who has created some amazing 3D character models and art for this series. Be sure to check these guys out. I'll leave links to their channels and socials in the description. Unfortunately I can't name everyone, as otherwise I'll be here all day, but know that every single one of you that found time to contribute to Legacy of Kain, whether it be by drawing a piece of art, to simply commenting on a video, you have my utmost respect. Before I call it a day, I'm also pleased to announce that I'm launching my first ever merch drop on the channel. Guys, if you ever wanted to support the channel, now's your chance. We have a range of t-shirts, hoodies and face masks, all with a brand spanking new logo, inspired by some of my favourite symbols in gaming. You can guess which ones. I really hope you enjoy. Remember to like, share and subscribe. As always, stay awesome. This is Strictly Fantasy, signing off.